Aleese Lightyear here. Welcome back to the channel. I am a Black American who has been living and sometimes thriving in China for the past 6 years, 4 years in Beijing, 2 in Chengdu. And in this video, we are breaking down the cost of living between a tier 1 city like Beijing and a tier 2/new tier 1 city like Chengdu. So whether you're thinking about moving to China or just traveling in China, this video will give you a clearer picture of just how far your money will get you. But before we dive in too deep, make sure you hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. It's just a tiny little tap for you, but for me, it helps tremendously. It tells YouTube that more people should be watching my content. The top 4 tier 1 cities are Beijing, Shanghai, Shenzhen, and Guangzhou. Chengdu is known as a new tier 1 city, but it's still like a tier 2 city. I guess it's called a new tier 1 because it's bigger, richer, and more international than your typical tier 2 city. Some other tier 2 cities in China are Xi'an, Hangzhou, Suzhou, Harbin, Nanjing, Nantong, Hefei. The list goes on and on and on. Let's talk transportation. China's got some of the best public transit system in the whole world. It's fast, it's clean, and it's safe. Subways, high-speed trains, buses, and shared bikes, I'm pretty sure are set at a national price. I don't think that they get cheaper city by city. I'm not really sure, don't quote me on that. With shared bikes, you can unlock one pretty much anywhere. Ride it around town and it'll only set you back a few US cents. And you can buy a monthly shared bike plan for under 10 USD. Where you're really gonna feel the difference in price between a tier 1 and tier 2 city is with the taxis. In Beijing, I think the base fare for a taxi is about 13 RMB. And in Chengdu, it's about 8 RMB. And that gap adds up really quickly when you take taxis quite frequently. My last few years in Beijing, I used to live very close to one of the airports, and my taxi ride used to be like 50 yuan, which was great, opposed to when I lived downtown Beijing and that taxi ride to the same airport was like 300 RMB. Here in Chengdu, if I want to go to one of the airports, it's only about 30 RMB. And I also remember a horrible time in Shanghai when I got stuck in traffic coming from one of the further airports trying to get downtown, and I had to pay about 400 RMB. So the difference between the tier 1 taxi base fare and a tier 2 taxi base fare is just humongous. And believe me, when you're in China, you take taxis every single day. All right, let's get into the yummy, delicious food. We're gonna be talking Western food and Chinese food and what that kind of average prices are for both cities. And let me tell you, it feels real different. Starting with Western food, in Beijing, you are spoiled for choice, and I miss it so much. There are so many international restaurants that you could go to a new one every single day for a month and still probably have about 50 to 80 more to try. Plus, they're not just like random kind of cafes that serve Western style food. They're actual restaurants that are owned and operated by actual chefs or expats from that country. So the Italian food, you're getting authentic handmade pasta. Mexican food, you're getting fresh corn tortillas. French bakeries, you're getting all pain chocolat or whatever that's called. It feels endless. Meanwhile, in tier 2 cities like Chengdu, the scene is much smaller. Of course, there are some really good international restaurants, but there's just not as many. And a lot of them end up closing within 2 or 3 years because maybe the owner goes back to their home country, or because there just isn't a big enough customer base to keep the business up and running. So like I said, your options are limited in a tier 2 city. Now, chains like KFC, McDonald's, Burger King, Subway, you can find them all over the country and the prices will remain the same. Price-wise, international food is expensive in both cities. For example, if you go to a restaurant and order a burger, fries, and a Coke, in Chengdu, that is gonna be probably around $15 US. Whereas in a first tier city, maybe Beijing, Shanghai, that same meal could cost $20, $25, $30, $35. A lot of it has to do with the quality and the type of the restaurant. On the flip side, local Chinese food is where you really see the value in tier 2 cities. A filling sit-down meal with multiple dishes shared between friends might cost you $5 to $10 a head in a tier 2 city. Even grabbing noodles on the street can be $1 or less in a city like Chengdu. Beijing is still cheap by Western standards, but it's definitely more expensive than Chengdu. In Beijing, a casual Western-ish hangout spot like QMax runs you about 145 RMB. Whereas in Chengdu, if you go to an American-style burger place called Palette, it's only gonna land you around 100 RMB. If you're somebody who fancies hotel dining in Beijing, that price can spike all the way up to 1200 RMB, but in Chengdu, you're looking more at about 600 or less for a really nice buffet. For local meals, you can eat pretty cheap in accordance to US standards in both cities. Let's talk about breakfast. In Beijing, one of the most popular breakfasts is jianbing, and usually that costs between 8 and 10 yuan. Here in Chengdu, people like noodles for breakfast, baozi for breakfast. I have bought a big steamed bun for 1 yuan, and that was my breakfast. So 1 yuan versus 8 yuan is crazy. A Chengdu specialty dish like dandan mian, dandan noodles, is gonna cost you about 8-9 yuan, and then maybe 2 yuan for a drink. So possibly in total, your lunch could be 10 yuan. In Beijing, you can get the famous jiajiang mian, which costs between 10 and 20 yuan. Add a drink to that, you could be spending up to 25 yuan for your lunch. Also in Chengdu, you can get gongbao ji ding for about 35 yuan. You could have a sit-down meal with your friends to have a hot pot, which is gonna be maybe 90 to 140 yuan per person. In Beijing, you can get a Beijing Taoya, which costs between 70 and 300 yuan per person. You could get a jiaozi dumpling meal that maybe will cost you between 45 and 65 yuan. Both of these cities are still pretty cheap by US standards, but usually in Chengdu or another tier 2 city, you get more bang for your buck. But it's here with the apartment prices where you will save the most. A furnished 1-bedroom apartment about 85 square meters in an expensive area of Beijing rents for around 15,000 RMB a month. That's just under 2,100 US dollars. In Chengdu, an equivalent place costs about 4,600 RMB, which is about $640. In a normal area not centrally located in Beijing, rent still is gonna run you about 7,000 RMB, which is about 980 US dollars. While in Chengdu, it's gonna be about 2,700 RMB, which is about $380. So let me just roll some footage of my lovely current Chengdu apartment that is so much cheaper than what I was paying in Beijing. So bottom line, when we are talking about 1 or 2 bedrooms in a tier 1 city, you're gonna be paying at the low end 6,000 yuan and at the high end 15,000 plus. In tier 2 cities or like a new tier 1 city like Chengdu, you can be paying as little as 1,500 yuan all the way up to 7,000 yuan for a 1 to 2 bedroom. All of course depending on where you are in relation to the city center, the subway, and what amenities you have. Leisure spending depends a lot on your vibe. For me, I rarely go to hair salons, maybe just a few times a year to get my hair braided. I mostly stream movies at home since Chinese theaters don't always show Western releases, and I don't have a membership. I work out in the park with the aunties and uncles, and I do take some private like Pilates and pole fitness classes. So here's the breakdown on just some general leisure activities that you may or may not be interested in, but let's talk about the cost. Starting with gym memberships. In a tier 1 city, you're looking at about approximately 400 yuan per month, which is roughly about $55. Compared to a tier 2 city, it's much lighter on the wallet, with the average being about 225 yuan a month, which is about $25 US. Next, drinks at a bar. In a city like Beijing, a standard pint of beer can cost you maybe 15 yuan. I'm not a beer drinker, so I really don't know. I just had to Google this because I don't know how much a beer costs. But in a nicer bar or expat area, you're looking at 55 to 100 for a cocktail, depending on what it is that you like to drink. In tier 2 cities, I'm sure that the beer costs the same, or maybe it's a little bit cheaper. Not really sure, but a decent cocktail in a tier 2 city typically lands between 40 and 80 yuan. Now moving on to the spas, because I love a good spa and a massage. A massage in tier 1 cities, a mid-range massage is gonna cost you around 200 yuan. And if you go to a fancier place like a hotel spa, that can be 600 yuan and higher. In a tier 2 city, a basic massage at a mid-range priced place is gonna be like 80 yuan. And if you go to a higher end place, it's probably gonna be like 150 to 200 yuan. If you're a coffee drinker, like most places in China have Starbucks, Tim Hortons, McDonald's coffee, KFC sells coffee in China, and all of those national chains are usually the same price. But if you're going to like a cutesy standalone cafe in a tier 1 city, you're gonna be paying 35-40 yuan for a coffee, which is $5 to $6 US, and that's pretty much how much coffee costs in the US. In tier 2 cities, it's a bit cheaper, usually about 25 yuan in an independently owned cafe for a coffee. When it comes to haircuts, honestly, I have no idea how much a haircut costs anywhere in this country because I cut my own hair and that's free. But I do see lots of street barbers and like little barber shops in the subway stations or in the grocery store, and they're always advertising like 10, 15, or 20 yuan haircuts. And I've seen that in Beijing and Chengdu. So I guess for men, it's pretty affordable to get your hair cut. For ladies, no idea. No idea. I don't know. Why such a difference? And I guess it just breaks down to the overhead. In tier 1 cities, they have higher rent. They have more staff, and often they have Western standard facilities. In tier 2 cities, rents aren't as high. Things are a bit leaner, more local, and just priced accordingly. But again, your lifestyle matters. So these numbers, yes, they are great to know, but feel free to tune your expectations based on how you actually spend. So at the end of the day gotta end, and the cost of living in a tier 1 or tier 2 city in China really boils down to what you value the most. In tier 1 cities like Beijing and Shanghai and Shenzhen, you're paying a premium for international vibes and endless opportunities, but that also means higher rent, pricier cocktails, and bigger monthly expenses. In tier 2 cities like Xi'an, Chengdu, or Kunming, life is a bit slower, a lot less international, but your money does stretch so much further. So if you're in a place where you're just like, I don't know which city in which tier is gonna fit me best, and you need some personalized help, go ahead and click the link in my description below to book a consultation with your girl. We can talk traveling, living, working in China, so you can make a choice that feels right for you. So I'll be real with you, since I've lived in Beijing and Shanghai, I don't have a favorite. I love both of the cities equally. I think a tier 1 city gives you just so many more comforts of home, but a tier 2 city just gives you more breathing room. So if you found the breakdown of everything in this video helpful, show me some love and make sure you tap like, hit subscribe, and stick around for more real talk on expat life in China. You know what it is, Aleese Lightyear, over and out.